The AC in your car only works on setting 3. 1 and 2 just blow warm air. You've been meaning to get it fixed for 4 months. You haven't. There's a notepad on the passenger seat and $75 million on the other side of that glass door. You've driven past this building 3 times without stopping. The 4th time, you pull in. The parking lot is half empty. A truck is idling near the loading dock. A guy in a yellow vest is standing by the side door, doing nothing in particular. Setting 3 blows of cold air into your face. You don't turn it down. Greenfield Logistics and Warehousing Incorporated. 14 trucks, 2 bonded warehouses. Contracts with 3 multinationals. 112 people on payroll. 60,000 tons of cargo a year. $75 million. You check your phone like the number in your account might have changed since this morning. It hasn't. $40,000. Same as yesterday. Most people would start the engine, pull back onto the 610 loop, tell themselves it was an interesting idea, file it somewhere in the back of the mind where interesting ideas go to stop being interesting. You pick up the notepad. What you have is a blank page and a pen and a vague, uncomfortable sense that the gap between $40,000 and $75 million isn't purely a money problem. Most people assume it is. That's why they start the engine. The gap is sequencing. Most people never find out because they leave before they have to sit with that. No office, no team, no budget, just a laptop, a stack of public filings, and a LinkedIn account you've had for 3 years and mostly ignored. 3 of those 6 weeks are mostly confusion, notes that don't connect yet, terms you half understand. You start a folder called Greenfield Research and fill it with documents you only partially understand. You highlight things without knowing why. You just feel like they matter. That's how it starts. Stuff accumulates until some of it starts to connect. There's a Transport Association dinner on a Thursday evening in late October. You're not on the list. You dress well and walk in as if you belong there. Nobody checks. Nobody ever checks if you look like you're supposed to be somewhere. You spend the evening mostly lost. The conversations assume context you don't have. You nod, you smile, you write things down on your phone and hope you'll understand them later. Most of it you don't. But then a man named Ray sits down across from you. Former driver, retired maybe 2 years. He barely looks at you, just stares at his plate, moves his food around, talks like he's thinking out loud. That Baytown warehouse has been a headache, he says. Lease dispute with the Port Authority, going on 2 years now. He says it like it's nothing. You write it down. You're not sure yet why it matters. That night, you spend 3 hours reading Port Authority lease cases because you only half understand what a bonded warehouse dispute does to a company's liability exposure. You find out around 1 in the morning. It's nothing. That becomes the pattern. You hear something. Then you go home and study until 2 in the morning because not understanding it bothers you now. Bob Hartley. 71 years old, 2 sons in Seattle, neither coming back to Texas to run a trucking company. An accountant named Gerald, 12 years on the job, whose numbers don't quite add up across 3 years of filings. Revenue is down 18% from its peak. 2 of the 3 major contracts are up for renewal in 8 months. You get some of it wrong the first time and have to correct it. 1 week, you're convinced the contract renewal is the core issue. Then you find the Baytown information again and realize the lease dispute is more urgent, and you rebuild the picture from a different angle. That's what 6 weeks actually looks like. Not clean, messy, and gradually less messy. By the end of it, you know more about Bob Hartley than most people who've sat across from him at a negotiating table. You've never met him. That's the first advantage. Before you walk into that building, it's the only one you have. But knowing everything about a man and sitting across from him are 2 completely different problems. The second one doesn't care how prepared you are. You get there 7 minutes early. The lobby chair is slightly lower than the coffee table in front of it. Small thing. You sit anyway. You put your hands on your knees and try to look like someone who belongs in a lobby like this. Your stomach is a mess. Your face isn't. A receptionist offers you coffee. You say yes. You don't want any, but declining creates a small distance you don't need right now. You take the cup, you hold it, you don't drink much of it. Then Bob Hartley comes out to get you himself. That surprises you. Big handshake. The kind of man who looks you directly in the eye, not warmly, assessingly. Like it's a test he gives everyone and keeps score. He leads you back through the building. Dispatch screens, a wall of clipboards. The smell of a place that has been running for a long time. You recognize some of what you're seeing from 6 weeks of reading. Not all of it. Enough to not look completely lost. He talks about the company. Founded it in 1998. Survived 2009 when 3 of his competitors didn't make it through. He's proud of that. Not the performed kind. The kind that cost something. The kind that comes from watching people you knew close their doors while you kept yours open. You don't interrupt. And somewhere around the 15-minute mark, you realize something unexpected. You actually find it interesting. Not as research, just interesting. The routing decisions. The port contractor problem in Corpus Christi almost ended the company in its 4th year. You're not paying attention, you're just there. He mentions the Baytown warehouse without lingering. You don't react. You know more about that lease dispute than he probably expects. You let it pass. He sat across from other people. You can feel it. People who came in with pitch decks and started talking about operational efficiencies before they'd been there 10 minutes. You don't do any of that. You're not sure if it's a strategy or if you're just too nervous to perform. You had a version of this meeting rehearsed on the drive over. It lasted 4 minutes before he started talking and you forgot the script entirely. There's a pause. You ask him one question, just one. What makes you decide now is the right time? He looks at you differently after that. He talks about his health. Just a gesture, the way people wave at something they don't want to name. He mentions his sons, Seattle. Then he says, almost to himself, that he's tired of fighting for port allocations. 40 years in logistics, and that's the thing that finally wore him down. Not the margins, not the trucks, the fighting. And then, almost offhandedly, he tells you the real number. Not 75 million, 54 million. He's already done the discounting in his own head. He just needed someone quiet enough to sit there long enough for him to say it out loud. You write it down, you thank him, you tell him you'll come back in 10 days. You walk out through the lobby. The half-finished coffee is still on the table. You leave it there. In the parking lot, you sit in the car for a moment. Setting 3 blows of cold air, $54 million in your handwriting, $40,000 in your account. The AC is running on the only setting that works. The real number is never the first number. It lives in the silence after the first number, waiting for someone patient enough to hear it. You drive home and sit in the kitchen with the lights off. The notepad is on the table, 2 numbers written next to each other. 54 million. 40,000. It looks like a joke, the kind that's too specific to be one. You close the notepad, then you open it again. The numbers don't change. Here's what any bank sees when it looks at you right now. No personal collateral, no transaction history on anything close to this scale. No capital network. No bank relationship beyond a checking account and a car loan you paid off 2 years ago. By every metric they use to decide who belongs at a table like this, you don't. You've seen what happens when this is the moment someone panics. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a week passes without the next call being made. Then another week. Then the momentum is gone, and the window closes, and the person tells themselves it probably wasn't the right time anyway. So you don't ask whether you should do this. Right now there's only one question that matters. What can pay for this instead of you? The asset generates cash flow. Real cash flow, not projected, not theoretical. 60,000 tons of cargo a year. 112 people show up every day. That cash flow exists right now, tonight, while you're sitting in the dark. If the structure is right, the asset services its own acquisition. Basic math, it turns out. You call Miles. Miles is a supply chain consultant you've known for 4 years, slightly cynical in the way that's actually useful. You lay it all out. The parking lot, the 6 weeks, Bob's real number, the 40,000 in your account. Miles goes quiet, not the quiet of someone thinking, the quiet of someone who has already formed an opinion and is deciding whether to say it directly. This is bigger than anything you've done. You say, I know. Send me the numbers. he says. Not yes, not enthusiasm, just send me the numbers. He calls back 2 days later. 2 days during which you check your phone more than you'd like, and prepare yourself for the version of this call where he tells you it doesn't work. He leads with a question, pushes back on one assumption in the model. You defend it. He pushes again. You sit with it for a moment and realize he's right, and tell him so. There's a pause. I think there's something here, he says. Not brilliant. No, let's do it. Just, I think there's something here. You offer him 3% equity. He says he needs to think about it. He calls back the next morning and says yes. This is the part nobody shows you. Not the deal. The hour before the deal exists, when the math doesn't work yet, and the kitchen is dark, and you're deciding whether to keep going, or just drive home and pretend the parking lot never happened. The parking lot already happened. You keep going. You and Miles spend a week on the financial model, the honest version. Every time you shade an assumption optimistically, he catches it and makes you put it back. 3 times you think you've finished, and Miles finds something you missed, and you go back in. What it finally shows surprises you. Not because it's better than expected, because it's cleaner. With the existing contracts in place, Greenfield generates enough cash flow to service a significant loan. Not comfortably, but enough. The business can borrow against itself. Miles circles a number on the printout. Doesn't say anything. Just circles it and looks at you. Then he says, the model only holds if those contracts are still there when you walk into a bank. He's right. 2 contracts up for renewal in 8 months. A bank will see that expiration date and price the risk accordingly, maybe all the way to no. Before the bank, you need the contracts. You find Dana, procurement manager for one of Greenfield's largest clients. You call her on a Tuesday afternoon with a rough script on a notepad and your heart doing something uncomfortable in your chest. You don't tell her you're buying the company. You ask, hypothetically, whether her team would consider a 3-year locked contract at a slight discount in exchange for guaranteed capacity. She doesn't say yes, not immediately, not even close. She asks for revised pricing. Legal has questions about term length. Procurement pushes back on a capacity guarantee clause. You spend 12 days on language that seems insultingly small given what's at stake. 2% here, a clause there, 4 drafts on a single definition. At one point, day 9, you genuinely think the whole thing might fall apart over a pricing disagreement that amounts to less than $40,000 annually. You don't tell Miles how close it feels. You don't tell anyone. On day 11, you start rehearsing the version of your life where this quietly disappears and you never mention it to anyone. Where the notepad stays in the car until you throw it away. Where the parking lot was just a parking lot. Then, at 6:14 on a Friday evening, the signed letter of intent arrives in your inbox. You're at a gas station when it comes through. You read it twice, standing next to the pump. Then you go inside and buy a bottle of water you don't need, and stand in the refrigerated drinks aisle for a moment because it's cold and quiet and nobody is in there. Then you get back in the car and drive home. Now you have 3 things. A letter of intent from a Fortune 500 company, a financial model built on real cash flow, a motivated seller with a known real number. You walk into a mid-tier commercial bank. Your relationship there is, honestly, not impressive. A loan officer named Pete, who knows your name but not much else. You put all 3 things on the table. You don't sell him a vision. You don't talk about upside or growth runway. You just let them sit there. Pete isn't looking at you. He's looking at the LOI. Running the debt service coverage ratio in his head while you're still talking. You stop talking. One thing worth saying, this doesn't happen at every bank with every deal. Timing mattered. Alignment mattered. You can build the best structure in the world and still need the pieces to land right. They landed. 14 days later, the term sheet arrives. You read it 4 times. Keep waiting for the part where it doesn't say what you think it says. There isn't one. The bank will fund $38 million. The business secures the loan. You're the operator who makes it run. Pete doesn't care whether you're impressive. He cares whether the numbers survive contact with reality. You put 3 things on the table that do exactly that. That's the whole job. $38 million from the bank. 54 million is the target. That leaves 16 million in equity you still need to find. You still have 40,000 of your own money. The gap is smaller than the parking lot, but $16 million is still $16 million. Most people stop here. The bank said yes, which felt like the hard part. Then you did the math on what was left. There's a voice that shows up right around here. It says, you're one phone call away from humiliating yourself in front of someone you actually know. Someone who'll remember. You make the calls anyway. The first one goes badly. Not dramatically. Politely. A former colleague. Someone you've known 8 years. Someone who's mentioned more than once he's looking for deal flow. Listens to the whole thing. Asks 2 questions. Then says, this isn't quite the right fit for where he is right now. Under 6 minutes. You thank him? You hang up. You sit with that for a moment. The second call doesn't happen because the person asks you to send everything over and then doesn't respond. Not no. Just nothing. You follow up once, then 4 days later, then you stop because you understand what the silence means. That one is somehow worse than the first. You call Walter. Walter is a retired engineer, late 60s. His money is sitting in money market funds, not doing anything. He's mentioned it more than once in the way people mention things they're quietly frustrated about. You sit at his kitchen table. Actual kitchen. Tea on his side, water on yours, the model and term sheet, and Dana's letter spread out between you. Walter asks questions. Slow ones. Methodical, load-bearing questions. He wants to understand the structure before he decides if it holds. Baytown lease, contract renewal timeline. Debt service coverage if one contract falls through. You have the answers. Miles already asked the same questions 2 weeks ago. The last one Walter asks while standing at the counter refilling his tea. Back to you, waiting for the kettle. He doesn't turn around. You answer it. He comes back, sits down, looks at the term sheet, not reading it, just looking. Then says he's in. 12% equity. Doesn't look up when he says it. Just nods once like something has been decided. Conrad is a private investor out of Dallas. 3 conversations total through a LinkedIn group. You send the documents before you call. When he picks up, he's already read them. 1 question. The bank's already done its diligence on the cash flow model? Yes. Then, I'm not redoing that work. What's the equity structure? You walk him through it. He's quiet for a moment. That's clean, he says. Conrad says he's in. Together they commit $17 million. The colleague who declined in 6 minutes saw the same 3 documents. So did the person who ghosted you. The difference wasn't the materials. The difference was who was sitting across from the materials. You don't know exactly what that means. You think about it sometimes. On paper, still on paper, you control 76% of a $75 million company with $40,000 of your own money. Day 10 is coming. The notepad from the parking lot is still on the passenger seat. You've filled most of it. The number on the cover page hasn't changed. What changed is that everything is built around that number. Day 10. Exactly when you said, you don't know why keeping that one small promise matters so much to you. Everything else has been uncertain. The model, the bank, the investors, the number underneath the number. But you said 10 days, and it's 10 days, and you're back in the same parking lot, same building, same guy in the yellow vest near the side door. You sit in the car for a moment before going in, setting 3 blows of cold air into your face. You still haven't fixed it. You've rehearsed the framing maybe 40 times in the past week. In the shower, on the drive to work, at 2 in the morning, running it forward and backward until it felt solid. You're not sure it's solid. You think it is. You're not sure. You go in. Same lobby. Same chair, slightly too low for the coffee table. Different receptionist. You don't take the coffee this time. Your stomach is fine. That surprises you a little. Bob comes out again. Same handshake, same eyes assessing you before you've said anything. Same room. Different posture. Last time you came to listen. This time you came to put something on the table. You don't build up to it. $52.5 million. You say it clearly. No softening, no preamble. You put it on the table and let it land. He knows it's below the number he gave you. You know he knows. You don't look away. Then the structure. $33 million at closing. Clean. Wired. Done. $19.5 million deferred over 18 months. backed by a personal guarantee and a charge on one of the warehouses, the one with a clean title, not Baytown. Fixed schedule, no ambiguity, no renegotiation. You watch his hands while you talk. They're still. Here's what the number alone doesn't tell him. He doesn't just get paid, he gets out clean. A timeline he can put in a calendar and explain to his sons in Seattle without the conversation becoming complicated. He gets to walk away from the port allocation fights and the Baytown dispute and Gerald's mess, all of it, on a date he can see from here. He gets to set it down, don't hand it off in a rush, not sell under pressure with everyone in the room able to see he needed to sell. Set it down carefully, on his own terms, to someone who showed up prepared and came back exactly when they said they would. You finish talking, you don't add anything after the last sentence. This is the hardest part. Every instinct is telling you to keep going, to clarify something, to fill the space with something that sounds like confidence. You don't. Every word you add after the number lands is working against you. Bob looks at the documents, picks up the deferred payment schedule, reads it slowly, sets it back down. He doesn't look at you. The silence is longer than comfortable, not empty, weighted, like something is being decided in real time, and you're not allowed to participate in the decision. You don't try to participate. Then he says, "All right, just that." No enthusiasm, no relief. Like a man who's been holding something heavy for a very long time and has finally, very carefully decided to put it down. He picks up the pen. He signs. You shake hands. You say something about next steps, attorneys, and wire instructions. The words come out in the right order. You're not entirely sure how. You walk back through the operations floor, past the 112 people who will come in tomorrow, not knowing anything changed today. Out through the lobby, through the glass doors, into the parking lot. You walk out through the glass doors into your car. You sit down. You reach for the seatbelt. Your hands aren't quite steady. Not dramatically, just not quite steady. Two hands doing something they've done 10,000 times before, and today it takes a moment longer than it should. You clip the buckle, hands on the wheel. You don't start the engine yet. Greenfield Logistics and Warehousing Incorporated. $75 million. Yours. On paper. In the documents Bob just signed. In the wire instructions Pete is processing right now. In the equity agreements Walter and Conrad countersigned last week. Yours. The AC runs on setting 3. The notepad is on the passenger seat. Maybe 4 blank pages left at the back. You don't write anything. You just sit there with the cold air on your face and the building in the windshield and no organized thought in your head at all. Then you start the engine and drive home. Your phone starts buzzing around 7 that evening. A text from someone who heard something from someone. Then another. Then a missed call you weren't expecting. You answer a few. You let most go to voicemail. Not because you don't want to talk, because you don't know how to explain what happened today without it sounding like you're lying. Every time you try to form the sentence, it comes out wrong. Too big or too clinical or too much like something you read somewhere, rather than something that actually happened to you in a parking lot in Houston on a Tuesday. So mostly, you don't answer. You eat dinner, something simple, you wash the dishes, you stand at the sink for a while, looking at nothing in particular. Then people find out. Over days, over weeks. And when it reaches them, they fill in the story with whatever explanation requires the least adjustment to how they understand the world. You got lucky. You knew the right people. You had money somewhere nobody knew about. They're not entirely wrong. Timing was real. Bob needed to exit at exactly the moment you showed up. Dana almost didn't sign over a clause that took 4 drafts to get right. The colleague who heard the same pitch declined in under 6 minutes. Another person never responded at all. None of it was guaranteed. But here's what they don't see. They don't see Ray staring at his plate, mentioning the Baytown lease like it was nothing. They don't see the dark kitchen. $54,040,000 written next to each other, looking like a joke. They don't see Walter standing at his counter with his back to you, waiting for the kettle. They don't see Bob going quiet before he said all right. Nobody puts that part in the headline. Too slow, too unglamorous, too full of 3 weeks of confusion, a person who ghosted after asking for the full model, 12 days of back and forth over contract language while you tried not to think about what it meant if it fell through. And day 11. Rehearsing the version of your life where the notepad stays in the car until you throw it away. But it's the only part that's real. You didn't buy a company you couldn't afford. You spent 6 weeks building the conditions that made it possible to buy. Then the structure. Then the people. Some who said no, one who disappeared, 2 who said yes. Then the offer. Slowly, imperfectly, with a lot of parking lots, dark kitchens, and 14-day waits in between. The whole setup assumes you come in with a track record, collateral, and an office with glass walls. You didn't have any of that. The notepad is still on the passenger seat. The AC still only works on setting 3. You never did get it fixed.